Hello, Dr. Lamb.
Hey, Jerron, how are you?
I am tired. We had our
Tired, but still.
first day of summer leadership conference today.
Oh man, oh man. And you told me where it was. Remind me again.
It was at West Charlotte High School.
What? But just in the gym, the
No,
auditorium.
the whole building, all three floors.
Oh, well, that's what I was asking. I didn't understand how that was going to work.
It was still tight. The auditorium was packed. Like I sat on the floor for a minute before
Yeah,
I got a seat.
yeah. I mean, why did they do that? I mean, I don't understand that.
Money.
But I mean, even money. I mean, there's better places in the district to do it than West Charlotte. Some of the newer places have bigger areas. I don't understand.
Mhm.
I guess I guess people don't don't get it. I mean, that's what I was talking about over the week. I don't understand why they were having graduation ceremonies outdoors at the amphitheater. The whole idea of moving away from campuses was to go indoors. I mean, I know y'all know that we got hit by lightning at Olympic, and that was the reason why we went inside. That was in maybe 97 or 98. And
And
so it
maybe
doesn't do any good to go to a pavilion or arena if it's outdoors. People were falling out with heat exhaustion and all that. They had Philip O'Berry's there. But that makes no sense. You don't do this to go outside. You can go outside at your own place, stand out the ball field. The whole idea of moving them was to go inside after we got hit by lightning.
so maybe they should have had somebody who knew that information around the table. I
But
know when
yeah,
they
that
talked about
actually
it.
knew why we did that.
Right. This year, it was more focused on getting more of them done in a short amount of time.
But yeah,
Money.
yeah, I know money. Well, I heard quite tangentially that 1.4 million for graduation got spent up on something else because people didn't know that that's what it was for. That they thought didn't understand that that was in the athletic budget because Vicki Hamilton ran graduation when she was athletic director 30 years ago.
Yes, and the athletic director was busy running my school. So the second person in charge was running graduation.
But didn't understand that that's what the money was for. No, I mean I've told the story. I'll tell it again. They had the stage pulled up to at the end of the football field at Olympic High School where the power is at the scoreboard, and the lightning hit the scoreboard and lit us all up. Yes, I was at the podium. I'm lucky to be alive. Probably if I'd have had my hand on it, it would probably kill me.
Wow.
Um, yeah, my toenails finally grew back. I'm not making that up. All my toenails came off. Uh,
I'm late to the party. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. So Jerron, you were talking about graduation in Charlotte Mecklenburg.
Yeah, well, we started out with all the bad decisions they're making lately about
Oh, okay.
holding events. It started with graduation. The whole idea of going inside was we got hit by lightning, literally got hit by lightning at high school graduation when I was principal at Olympic. And so they've just made a series of bad decisions. Somebody wasn't paying attention and they spent all their graduation money on something else. And they're running short about 1,400,000.
Mm,
They rent Bojangles Coliseum, the Charlotte Coliseum, all these big indoor arenas around town and have graduation. Well, they ended up Philip O'Berry was outside at the little amphitheater at the Music Factory uptown, and it was 100 and something degrees, and people were falling out from heat stroke.
mm,
I mean, it just yeah, the whole idea. I mean, you can have it at your own ball field if you're going to have it outside. It doesn't cost anything. It's just too dangerous.
mhm,
Um,
mm.
that's one of the reasons why at Gardner Webb, I'm still with you. We've gone back to doing two ceremonies, and if we have to, at Christmas, we may do three, so we can go back inside again. The former president that just left, he wanted to do fireworks like a kid, and we about got killed twice during his. We were under tornado. I mean, and it came through. We saw it, and we had lightning strikes and all. I mean, you just spring graduation is not smart, especially a place like Gardner Webb that's right there on the Broad River, and everybody knows. I mean, the old country folks will tell you, and it's the truth. Those clouds follow the river, a big river like the Broad River, and we're right there. I mean, the lightning just beats our place up every afternoon in the summertime already. Um, and so, but yeah, we actually got hit by lightning at Olympic High School. I want to think that was the spring of 1998. Greg Clemmer was the area superintendent and I was the principal. And we stood in the gym. He said, we got a break in the weather, and it stopped raining. And we went down there, and I was just telling them to move their tassel when the lightning hit the scoreboard. And that's not hyperbole. I mean, that's the real deal. It hit the scoreboard. All right. I'm going to wait a little extra. Mondale called and said that some people are locked out of their account. So did the email come to your Gardner Web email with the link to get in case you
Yes, sir.
couldn't get in? All right. All right. So while we're waiting here, let me see. Stars of the week. All right. Our points leaders this semester are Sparkle and Regina. They are out in front. So the rest of you need to get working on turning your work in and catch up. But they are our two stars of the week. Brittany, I see you're here. I don't see Shamara, but I put your assignments in the shell and sent you a message earlier today. Your class reading assignments. I want you to review. It's actually a PowerPoint of about 43 slides on two chapters. Condense it down and bring us that information.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you.
Did
I'll
you share
share.
the PowerPoint with us?
No, you don't have to make one. You just take notes.
Okay.
Don't reinvent the wheel. That's why I picked something that was a PowerPoint, something that'd be simple. We're interested in the information. If I don't ever see another PowerPoint, I hope it's not because I died, but if I'm still working and I never see another one, I won't be angry. Um, there they come. There's Mondale. Trying to get the rest of these people in. There's Quintina. And there we go. All right. All right. All right. Sham, I just mentioned, you got an email from me. I put your assignment in Blackboard today. Just review, take some notes on your chapter and present at your time. I put a two-chapter PowerPoint in. Let me share my screen and I'll show that. And again, congratulations to Sparkle and Regina for being our points leaders and our stars of the week. So if you look right here, chapters 1 and 2, I put it right here at the top. All right. A little update. Let me turn my camera off. It's a little unstable. We had our dissertation conference over the weekend, the middle weekend for the 740s. It went real well. Other than it was just long, but that's okay. But a couple of things Uh, a couple of things stuck out in my mind that I wanted to mention to y'all um, about how to write chapter two. And so I'm going to work with you more directly. I know I have already, but we're going to look at chapter two again. Um, so be reminded, if I don't remember, remind me. There's Sparkle. Why is it your star of the week is always late? Um, Here she comes. Um, for there's Sparkle. There's the star. Sparkle and Regina are stars of the week. Why is it your star of the week is always late? But she's here, and that's all that matters. So congratulations. Um, Again, they talked about the chapter two being disconnected. Well, that's because people are continuing to take those 45 random annotated bibliographies and trying to cram them into chapter two. Don't do that. Um, I know you could have probably learned the process doing five, but problem is that when you make people do 45, they feel the need because they spend all that time to put them somewhere in their dissertation. Don't do that. Um, it makes it hard for me to design instruments or for us to design instruments that'll hit all of those that wouldn't take a month to take a survey or a week to do an interview. So we'll talk about chapter two again. And again, Dr. Van Cleve reiterated qualitative doesn't have to have like an ethnography. It can just be descriptive qualitative. Or, uh, I was in a rant again about phenomenology. Everybody wants to do a phenomenology. Um, I would discourage you from doing that. First of all, there needs a phenomenon needs to have happened. Being a black male teacher is not a phenomenon. Most of the things that folks want to do a phenomenology on is not a phenomenon. You can do just as much descriptive and lived experience in a descriptive qualitative as a phenomenology. But again, the first rule of phenomenology is a phenomenon, a definable phenomenon had to have occurred. Just like a case study, you must have a definable, what's called a bounded system. If you want to do Winston-Salem, Forsyth schools, that would be a case study. If you want to do um, Parkland High School in Winston, you could do a case study there. Why? I don't know, but you could, or Reynolds, or Mount Tabor. But you can't do a social media sample and then call it a case study. We're having problems with understanding the rules of qualitative work. And I'm going to go over those again. So those two things stood out. Quantitative, I went over Qualtrics, and I'm going to go over that in terms of where you get your data out of Qualtrics. There's two different places. It's in two different formats according to what kind of analytics that you're going to run. We need to see that again. I probably need to do my Qualtrics presentation to remind you. A reminder on CITI, the IRB training, you probably need to go ahead. They'll have you do it next semester anyway, but it wouldn't hurt to see it. And so remind me, I think I've already showed it to you one time. I need to probably follow up again on that, make sure everybody can get in and get that done. They sent out an email today to remind everybody to do that. I know we've already done it, but we'll probably look at that again. But those were the big takeaways from the weekend. All right, we're ready to get started tonight, so let me share my screen. And we'll look at the weekly schedule and we'll catch up on that. All right, today is June 16th. This is the middle class between our two weekends. I will see you Saturday week on the 27th in Charlotte. We'll have another Zoom class the week after the 4th on the 7th, and then our final weekend is the 18th and 19th, and our final class is the 27th. We will add the two additional presentations to the last class since it's a shorter group. So right here is where uh, Brittany and class 5. I'll just go ahead and write that out. All right, so that's our schedule.
Dr. Lamb,
Yes.
Donovan and I are going to switch.
Okay.
I'm going to do his and he's going to do mine.
Okay. All right.
Because I'll be in class, but I'm supposed to be helping with some event they're doing at my new school I'm adding to that week because that's the week before we go back to school.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm gonna do him and he's gonna do mine and I'm gonna do his.
All right.
If that's okay.
That's great.
Thank
All
you.
right. Um, last thing that we need to talk about is what we're going to do for lunch on Saturday. I was thinking about ordering pizza and order from a place that has sandwiches too. So if you want a sandwich, I think, how does that sound? I mean, I'm about Jason's Deli now. We had Jason's Deli again this weekend. I had it last weekend. Um, uh, Everybody wants Jason's Deli. So I'm thinking about pizza. If you got a better idea, send me an email. But I'm thinking about ordering some pizza. All right. That sounds good. All right. Let's get started tonight with our presenters. All right. So our presenters
Show off your manicure on that hand.
are Camille, Yesenia, Mondale, Kanisha, Naisha, and Yesenia may be late. She's got an issue. And so if she's not with us, she said she'd be here before the evening's over. So, but we'll go ahead and get started with Camille. Camille, I'll turn my camera off and let you share your screen and let's get started.
Okay. Let me see where I can find mine. Okay. Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All
We
right.
can.
How do I have to download it or because I see it down here at the bottom, my presentation, but when I hit
Just, just,
share,
just, just, just click on it and make sure that it's on your screen somewhere. And then when you get your share, just share the screen and then you can go to it. Or
oh, okay. Hold on. Okay. I'm hitting. It says share a tab. Then let me. Okay, when it says share, it's still grayed out. Can y'all hear me?
yeah. When I hit share, it pops up and I can share entire screen is what you hope that you can do.
Yeah, I have it on the entire screen. Oh, okay.
There it goes.
All right. Now can y'all
Now,
see that?
now we can see it and you can put
Okay.
it in, you can leave it in slideshow mode or you can put it in full, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
But
Let
we
me
can see it
write it
now.
right here. Okay, y'all can see it?
There you
All
go.
right. Okay. All right. So, hello, everybody. My name is Camille Newman, and I am here to do chapters 13 and 14 for the Glickman text, Supervision and Instructional Leadership. And chapter 13 was entitled Assessing and Planning Skills. And Glickman first started the chapter with how we can assess and plan for our personal professional time, as well as assessing and planning for our organization, for our school. So, first, you can see on the left hand side where Glickman says that assessing and planning are two sides of the same coin. So, when we talk about the personal use of our time, Glickman states that we need to assess our current use of our professional time, then plan and manage the use of future time. Now, when we look at doing the same thing for our schools, we will need to determine where we are as a principal and our staff, where we've been and where we all currently are. Then once we determine that, then we need to decide where we want to go and then choose the path that we want to travel in order to reach that destination. So if you use the analogy of a GPS, if you don't know where your original location, if you don't know your original location or your destination, then GPS is useless. So once you know these two components, then you and your staff can map out your route. Okay, there we go. So now, where we're talking about professional use of our time, let's go back to our personal use of our professional time. So Glickman tells us about the tale of these two beginning principles. And so remember, we are talking about individual supervisor improvement. So let's look at beginning principle number 1 in green. Beginning principle number 1, he averaged with his personal time 3 hours per day observing classrooms and participating in lessons and visiting with teachers. So his main problem was that when he went and observed these classrooms, that he noticed that the teachers that had heterogeneous student groups had a longer waiting time when it came to instruction. So he figured that he needed to tell the teachers that maybe that if they put them in homogeneous students groups, that the waiting time would lessen. Now, when you look at the beginning teacher number 2, he was unable to even leave his office because he could not visit the classrooms due to all the paperwork, emails, phone calls, discipline referrals, and urgent matters. I related to this one personally for beginning principle number 2 because that's the way that I felt on my hallway. I have 3 4-man teams on my hall, and I couldn't even get past the first team to even do any observations because you're stopped and you're called on the walkie-talkie or urgent matters come up. Now, these 2 beginning principles, they had the same intentions. They planned their days out. They had the same school size, same neighborhood, same district with the same superintendent, and the same job responsibilities. However, let's look at the 5 parts of the plan for personal improvement that Glickman gives us. Let's look at principle number 2. How can I double my time visiting classrooms? So when I put myself into principle number 2's into to those shoes, these are the 5 parts of the plan that I would use that Glickman actually recommends. First, you look at what is the objective. So the objective would be to close the gap between the actual use of time and your preferred time. And the objective is to double the classroom visitation time. What actions need to be taken? Well, you can schedule set times each day for 2 classrooms observations instead of maybe planning and scheduling time for one day of doing 6 classroom observations. Schedule uninterrupted time for paperwork and emails, and you might can do that after school, possibly. When will these actions be done? You can probably schedule these classrooms visits, like say on Mondays and Wednesdays can be done in the morning, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, it can be done in the second half of the day. Paperwork can be scheduled probably like on Mondays and Fridays after school. Now, you also need to look at the resources that are needed to get this done. So you can explain to your administrative assistant the need to protect those uninterrupted times, or tell any of your other assistant principals that you have scheduled this time during the day and it needs to be uninterrupted, and discuss with the faculty the changes and that the need of those changes. How will the success of the goal be evaluated? Check whether the new schedule was followed, maybe after a week or maybe after 2 weeks, and then review and go back to see that if any other assessments need to be needed. Now, here's a reflection question. What are some areas of your work life that would benefit from personal time assessment and planning for change in the time allocations? So for me personally, and then we can probably have somebody, because I cannot see you all, so if someone wants to reflect on this question, as I said, I felt as if that I wasn't getting out to my classrooms as I needed to be, and it was because of all of the other things we as assistant principals have to do throughout the day, and things are always coming up. I even emailed teachers and told them that I was coming to their classroom during certain times. I even went and told my office staff, okay, I have these times I'm going to the classroom, anything that comes up. And I had things in place to take that time that for other people to take care of things that need to be taken care of while I was in the classroom. And when I did that, then that seemed to work. I also was able to get some observations done as well as other things. So when I actually read this chapter and actually worked on this presentation a few weeks ago, I actually did look at that, and I said that will definitely help me with this. Is there anybody out there, guys, and I guess that you can just unmute, that would like to reflect on this question?
So I'm Camille, Naisha here. I'm like you. I'm intentional about the time, making sure I notify those who support me and are around me, so that they can hold me accountable. But most importantly, I the night before, or maybe on a Sunday night or a Monday night, I kind of go through my schedule for the week, and I am intentional about the classroom walkthrough tools that I use. Just so that, and I put it on my calendar just so that I get the alert on my phone as well as my laptop, because I want to make sure I keep, classroom walkthroughs first and foremost, and make sure that's as our superintendent says, keeping the main thing the main thing.
Thank you, Naisha. And also, being that you said that, I also put alarms on my phone too as well. That was one thing that would keep me on point with certain things on my calendar and on my schedule. I put alarms actually on my phone, and it would ding to let me know I need to do this and do that. So thank you for that. Now, that was for our personal time. This is for your organization and for your school for instructional improvement. Now, Glickman says that this should be cyclical. All right. So if we look at doing a needs assessment for our school, let's start to the right of this screen, where first of all, you will plan. Design the improvement plan to meet your objectives that you come up with once you have done the needs assessment. Then you implement that plan, and then you evaluate the plan, and you evaluate how you implemented it and what were the outcomes for that. Okay. Ways of assessing organizational instructional improvement needs. So one of the ways that you can assess this is, first of all, there were several of these that Glickman gave, and I chose these 6 to put up here on the screen. First of all, speak to teachers, even the TAs, any administrators who work directly with the plan, to get more to kind of assess whether or not that you need to make any improvements with the instruction, your eyes and ears. Also, school-wide observations, which we talked about in our last class, that getting and gathering those individualized data. Review all of the curriculum and all of the instructional resources and materials, take a closer look at those unit plans and those pacing guides and review student performance data. That's what we do usually with all the state assessments and the district benchmarks and any of that. But also it's very, very important to look at student work. That should be ongoing throughout the whole entire school year to see if we need to improve any of the instruction and the delivery of the instruction. Also, a third party review. Get a neutral person to actually review the plan, and a ranking survey. Rank the strengths and the weaknesses of the plan. Now, right here, Glickman gives us many, many examples of things that we could do to analyze our organizational needs. For instance, and I have them listed right here, and I don't know if that you can see my cursor, the cause and effect diagrams, any flow charts, the Pareto charts, the PATH, which stands for the Planning Alternative Tomorrows with Hope, affinity diagrams, process decision program charts, and the Gantt charts. So here are some examples. I took some screenshots of some of these diagrams and charts and things that you can do to analyze your organizational needs. Now, this is also a reflection exercise, and I don't know if we will have enough time to go through these, but I took these from Glickman books, from the Glickman chapter right here, which had some good information and some good reflection to go back and look to see how would you deal with these scenarios here. So I don't know if we have enough time to do that. Maybe at the end, because I know we have other people that need to present. I will just move on with that. Is that okay, Dr. Lamb?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now with chapter 14, now the implementation and the evaluation skills. So now we go from chapter 13, assessing and planning. Now we're going to implementing and evaluating. So factors that affect implementation, paper, process, and performance. And also Glickman actually had the 5 stages of the implementation. It was readiness, installation, initiation, full operation, and continuation and renewal. Now, if we look at the formative program evaluations, this was one of the suggestions that I really liked, a feedback window, and it's also called a parking lot. So what you can do is to kind of evaluate your programs. You actually ask questions, and you can do this throughout the year. What aspects of the program are working well? What questions do you have about the program? What type of assistance do you need to better implement the program? And what suggestions do you have for improving the program? So it says that these formative assessments need to be ongoing throughout the school year. And these are very successful if they are actually placed in areas of the school in which the teachers frequent the most, like teachers' lounges or the mailbox room. But Glickman says that teachers must be part of the evaluation process. You must not do this alone or with a certain group of people, that the teachers must be part of the evaluation process. Program evaluation and teacher improvement. So empowerment evaluations, which is EE. These are some of the things right here. The supporters of EE is David Fetterman and Abraham Wandersman, and it's used in healthcare and government and community agencies. It involves supervisors guiding teachers as they perform the program evaluations while needing necessary supervisory support. So chapter 14 also goes into the purposes, the support, and the process of the empowerment evaluations. Now, there's 2 types of these evaluations. There's formative, which is delivered while the program is in progress, and summative. It is delivered after the program has existed, and it usually decides whether or not it's going to continue. His reflective exercise. Think of a specific school-wide instructional innovation that you believe would improve student learning if implemented in pre-K to 12 education. What types of professional development or professional learning would you recommend for teachers at each stage of concern about the innovation that you have identified? Now, this is just a reflective question that you can look at while we're looking into our personal professional time that we need to assess, then plan, and then implement, and then evaluate. And that is the end of my presentation for chapters 13 and 14. Are there any questions?
All right, excellent. Excellent. I'll use myself as the bad example quickly. Y'all are all familiar with my dissertation sign-up sheet. I'm very intentional about those times. I protect those times. Now, I've set them up on Monday and Friday and in the evenings opposite class, in order to be more available in the evening. But the intentionality of Monday and Friday is, um, in colleges, we don't have Monday meetings or Friday meetings. So now one of the things is we're supposed to take, I don't take days off anyway, but we're supposed to take Monday off if we had a class weekend. But see, that's the best day to meet with students. And so I've had to make decisions. I've had to make choices, um, in terms of if I think that's important, then I have to choose some things that may not be what I would normally choose, but it's intentional. Um, Classroom time has to be intentional. It can't just be whenever you get a minute, because you never get a minute. You must block out time. It must be intentional. It must fit your need. It can't the must fit the system. It can't just be when it's best for you. It has to fit. It has to fit the circumstance, and because of the circumstance in college life is that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are full of meetings, especially Wednesday. It has to be Monday and Friday. That way, I'm not scheduled to be somewhere else doing something else, or something always jumps off on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's just kind of crazy, but the same way with school, you've got to block some time. Now, I would not be blocking first period, dealing with breakfast buses and all those things. I would probably do a 2 hour block mid-morning and a 2 hour right after, right within 30 minutes or an hour after lunch. I would try to make that, from my experiences and my time in school, from about, well, it's according to what time school starts. When we had a 6:50 start time, about 8 o'clock to about 10 o'clock, because we started lunch at 10:30. Um, that's a good time when things slow down. You've dealt with all the things that got drugged to your door first thing in the day, and then after lunch, from we were done with lunch at 12, from 12:30 to 2:30. Whatever time you've got there, leading up, you've got to be intentional and block those days out, and you need to block them out in your calendar around times that you know that you're not going to be involved in district-wide meetings. That's just a suggestion that I have. All right, moving on. Who's our next presenter? I see, is Yesenia here yet? If not, we'll skip to our next one. Um, Let me look and see. Mondale, you're up.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
All right. Let me see about sharing my screen here. All right. Can everyone see my?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're still waiting.
Let me see what I need to do. Okay. About now.
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I have chapter 18 and chapter 19 from Glickman's resource book. The first thing that we saw with chapter 18 was we looked at professional development. Okay, professional development, or better known as PD, improves student learning by enhancing teacher knowledge, skills, beliefs, and instructional practices. Okay, in professional development, we see the different stages from focus on student achievement. When we focus on student achievement, that is the core of what we are trying to achieve in professional development and being successful as teachers. One of the things that is important for a successful professional development, as Glickman highlighted, was teachers being interested, teachers being having buy-in, teachers first and foremost being interested in getting better. That's one of the things that I pulled out through the reading and through the observation of the review. Teachers being invested in trying to get better. That's the first thing that has to be done before professional development is successful, is that your teachers have the interest involved in wanting to get better and wanting to do better. The next thing we saw in this particular objective was job embedded and ongoing professional development, professional development, which entails when the teacher is working on the job training, so to speak, OJT. That teacher is in their hands-on in the classroom. They're implementing those things that the professional development stands for, those things that the professional development is about, whether it's about math instruction or small groups or whatever the case is, that's being performed in practice. So they're practicing that in real time in the classroom. And that's what we mean when we talk about job embedded and ongoing professional development. Also collaborative rather than isolated. Professional development should be collaborative rather than isolated. Many of us know that we learn better when we're sharing ideas with other people and we're engaging with other colleagues. We're able to not only share the things that we know, but that we're also listening and observing the things that our colleagues know as well. So we understand that that is a great strategy and skill to collaborate with our colleagues and also align with school improvement goals. Okay. So not only are we collaborating rather than being isolated, we're not holding things back. We're not holding back things that we know, things that we understand about getting better as teachers, delivering better instruction, providing better strategies, but we're sharing. We're open to sharing the things that we know. Align with school improvement goals. Of course, we want to make sure that we're aligned with the school improvement goals and the school improvement implementations and indicators. We want to make sure that we're aligned with all those things and make sure that we support our teachers in making sure that those improvements are aligned and they're able to keep that alignment, they're able to protect their instructional time and things of that nature. Also, teacher knowledge and attitudes influencing success. So the teacher's knowledge and attitudes, as I said on the onset, that influences the success, the knowledge and the skill set that the teacher has. Also, that attitude that you present. Attitude affects everything we do. Attitude is like a flat tire. We can't go anywhere until we change it. So we want to make sure that we're, as teachers, we have a positive attitude towards things. And sometimes as educational leaders, we see situations where you have negative nannies, you have those who come with a lot of negative information there. You have some that are positive and want to see change, want to see growth, embracing new ideas. And then you have others that are the dragsters, so to speak, for the team who want to drag the other group down and kind of hold those back from breaking forth into new areas and new explorations. Okay, the next thing was integrating school-wide group and individual PD. Effective PD combines school-wide group and individual learning opportunities. So with school-wide, there you have common goals for all staff. School-wide, common goals for all staff. Group, department, or team needs. Individual, personal growth goals. And creating a clear improvement system. Creating a clear improvement system is one thing that we want to do when we're integrating school-wide, group, and individual PD, Glickman says. Building collective and individual capacity. So building that collective, that teamwork, that team delivery, as well as building that individual delivery for individuals to be able to perform at a high level independently and not always have to have the group. But from that PD, learning those skills, learning those things that you need so that when you're working independently, you can be strong in that as well. Alternative professional development formats. What we saw here, Glickman shows us that multiple formats support teacher growth and collaboration. 3 common formats were study groups. Study groups examine research and best practices, and those are very important to the success of the professional development form. Also, peer coaching. Peer coaching does the observation, the feedback, and the support. Peer coaching is important because you don't want to be linked with someone who's not giving you support, someone who's not talking with you on a periodic basis. In peer coaching, there should be scheduled times where that peer is speaking to that mentee or whoever they're coaching or whoever they're working alongside or their colleague. There should be meetings, there should be scheduled meetings and feedback and support to be able to ensure the fidelity that the professional development is going through with success. Also, action research. Action research investigates classroom problems using data. Okay, so as we look at data, many of us has been looking over data recently due to the end of year and end of grade tests and end of year exams. So when we look at improvements, we investigate classroom problems using data, but not only from that that testing perspective, but also from that behavior management piece. When we look at discipline referrals, what some of the things that we can improve upon from an action research perspective that can help improve the classroom model. And Glickman says to investigate classroom problems using data. So looking at the number of referrals and what areas they're coming from, and then seeing in those areas, specializing in ways that we can find out to learn more about the things that are going on. Many times the students know a whole lot about the things that they're doing and the ways that they learn, and they can share those things with us as teachers and educators and teach us. But also in terms of that behavior modification piece, they also show different types of behaviors that we don't know about as we should, or maybe as well as we could, so that professional development can improve when we see areas that have a high uptick of numbers that are problem areas within a school. And so the data is very important because we can look at that data, break it down and analyze it to see where we need to stress and put our most meat or most bang for our buck. Technology and professional development. Technology expands, Glickman notes, expands access to learning and collaboration. Technology is something that is good when it works, but sometimes when it doesn't, it's not so good. But it's something that we can rely on, and we are in the age of technology. So we have different ways that we can communicate and perform professional development so it will run seamlessly, most seamless as possible, and to make things more convenient. So online courses, we have those as it relates to professional development, of course, webinars, virtual PLCs, video coaching, discussion forums, digital resource sharing. Some of the technology, we have to be careful with it because as we're using it, I remember when it first came in that we would use the share platforms on different individual Google Docs and different individual forms and individual Excel sheets, and 3 or 4 individuals could be working on the same form at one time. To be careful and make sure that things go well and go right, we want to make sure that we communicate with each other that are on our team, the people that are on our team, to make sure that we're not overlapping duties, that we're not doing things doing double work. So the benefits are anytime, anywhere learning. So as we're here now, we're all collectively on the Zoom call. We're utilizing technology to achieve a goal of having class and being able to conduct our class. Increased collaboration. We're able to talk when we have technology. We're able to communicate with others. We're able to have meetings and discuss things. Flexible professional growth. It's very convenient when you can be in another state or another place and you don't have to be right person to person together, and you can meet and you can collaborate one with another. The key terms in this are online learning, virtual PLC, and digital collaboration. Commitment to professional development. Okay, we got to be committed to whatever we do. Anything we do, we got to have a commitment. So this is one of the things that can hinder and draw back the gains on professional development, are a lack of commitment. Lack of motivation and commitment depends on 2 psychological dimensions, Glickman says. One being the the psychological meaningfulness, which PD is viewed as valuable and worthwhile. And then the other is psychological availability. In both of those, you look at a time factor where do teachers view this professional development as something that they're going to do knitting, or they're going to be on their phone searching and shopping, or do they view this professional development as something that's meaningful to them, it's interesting to them? Do they feel like it's a well worth PD where they can put forth a commitment to their time and their energy and their resources to supporting? Because a lot of times PDs are broad, and sometimes they can be redundant, as Glickman noted in the text, but there are times when PDs can be useful for our improvement of our overall school functioning. So those were the breakdowns. Psychological was, is it meaningful? And then the other thing is it worth our time? Many teachers looked at that as being, hey, look, this PD is not worth my time. I'm not interested in it. I don't want to listen to it. I got better things I could be doing. I could be in my classroom working. So he really stressed about how to make the PD interesting so that teachers feel like it's of value. Next thing we saw, Glickman noted, was culturally responsive teaching. And in that, PD should address both teacher beliefs and classroom behaviors. Glickman says teacher and dispositions. So cultural awareness. Are you aware? I don't know about you, but you at some point in time, you may have experienced a teacher that is not culturally aware. And as teachers, we need to be culturally aware of a diverse group of students, right? Because we serve a diverse group of students in our schools. That's what's presented to us. So not that we need to be engulfed in their culture so much that we are adopting their ways and their behaviors of that culture, but we need to know enough about that culture so that we can be aware of the student that is presenting to us and how we can best serve them based on the culture that they're connected to. So that was one of the things that cultural responsive teaching aimed at. One was the goal of cultural responsive teaching was cultural awareness for teachers. Also, respect for diversity. That's self-explanatory. Respecting others who may be from other races, other backgrounds, other cultures, respecting their diversity, respecting their differences. Also, high expectations, having high expectations in cultural responsive teaching. not coming with the mindset that these students can't learn, or that group of students don't have the ability to learn, or that group of students can't do this, or just forming in your mind certain things about a certain group of students. Commitment to equity, having a commitment to making sure that everyone, every child can succeed, and being willing to differentiate that learning to make sure that what I may need may be something different than what Dr. Lamb may need. In that, making sure that we all have the things that we need. I may not need an extra sandwich at lunch, but he may need an extra sandwich at lunch based on what he has at his environment and in his home. Culture responsive teaching behaviors, teacher behaviors, inclusive instruction, include inclusive instruction. Inclusive meaning everybody is included. You're not just calling on a select group of students to read, but everybody gets an opportunity to read. And when we have those situations where students are perhaps shy or embarrassed or may not have read well, those are opportunities for improvement as teachers, and for us to double down on professional development, excuse me, so that those students who would likely be marginalized or left out because of their skill set are not left out, and that we include them. So calling on everybody, not just, and applauding and praising those when they are able to do something. You might praise one student who is a high achiever for doing one thing, but you might praise a student who doesn't answer out a lot for something else that's a lot more simpler. So just connecting with the intellect of who you are and who that child or that student who you're serving and teaching is. Cultural relevance talks about teacher behaviors. Culture and teacher behaviors talks about cultural relevance. Culture is relevant. Everybody's culture is important. Where people come from when we talk about culture is important. And we need to take that into importance and consideration when we serve the students and when we serve the populations that we serve. That everybody's has value, everybody's important, every student and every child and every teacher, for that matter, brings something to the table. Because not only do we teach students, but we also learn from them as well. They teach us. Also, multiple perspectives. Have been talking, and I talk to different colleagues and professionals, and have conversations. And sometimes my perspective and their perspective are different, but we can agree to disagree. We can appreciate others' perspectives and still go on about the business of teaching and learning. Student-centered learning. The child is the center of the learning, and the most important thing at the end of the day, are you doing what's best for students? Are you doing what's best for students? And in turn, that's going to not only improve students, but it's going to improve their families and their environments. Important considerations. Addressing bias, okay? Addressing bias, we have to do that. We have to address bias within ourselves, and we have to have those hard conversations and those professional conversations sometimes with our staff and our colleagues. At my school this year, we did a book study called Ruthless Equity. It was hard getting through it because you would have a divide sometimes. We have one group sitting over here, one group sitting over there. Nobody wanted to say anything and tell the truth, but it was a good forum to have, so that people could have that safe space to be able to speak up. But it's all about whether or not you deem that space to be safe or not. And the silence attributed that many of the people, many of the teachers, many of the staff didn't feel like that was a safe space to share their bias. So we have to bring that out to be able to be great schools and be able to be great educators and have great learning and educational spaces. We have to address those biases. And at a time like this, like never before in our government, in our world, biases have to be addressed, or we are wasting our time with trying to educate children. The price is so high right now in terms of how much we are being sucked and drained with the bias and the racial rhetoric every day that it impedes and it soaks through and it affects our teaching and learning within our school buildings. So we have to be able to talk about these things as human beings and be able to share how we feel in love. Also important considerations are challenging stereotypes. Stereotypes. You may have heard, I've heard, and sometimes I get tired of hearing, and teachers will have an overtone sometimes, and educators will have an overtone about a certain group of students. And it would always be, you know, they're always the student that's getting written up. They're always a student. And most of the time, it's not because of, sometimes it gets into not being because of an intentional action that they did, but because of their way, because of their culture. They get written up sometimes because of how they walk in the line, how they respond. But you got to be able to understand some things about students and children and human nature and cultures so that when a child responds in a certain way, you don't take it as if they're being disrespectful to you. No, that's how that child's learned. Can you show them a better way to respond than the way they're responding? And so that can be very frustrating because many times teachers don't have the patience because there's not a lot of time to take time to get to understand that particular child that they're trying to teach. But it would behoove each and every educator to make sure that we're taking the time, because if you don't take the time on the front end to get to learn the student, to get to know who they are, where they come from, then you're trying to educate ABCs and 1, 2, 3s is in vain. Key terms with that, as I discussed, were cultural competence, equity, inclusion, and asset-based thinking. All right, Guskey's evaluation model, it looked at 5 levels of professional development that it should be evaluated at 5 levels: participants' reactions, participants' learning, the organizational support and change, the use of new knowledge and skills, student learning outcomes. The purpose of Guskey's evaluation tool is to measure effectiveness and to guide continuous improvement and to demonstrate impact. Okay, we need to, as we're evaluating, no professional development is worth anything if it can't be measured. So we need to measure how effective is it being? Is it lessening the office referrals? Is it lessening the minor incidents? Is it lessening the absenteeism? Is it causing a score to go up in certain areas and certain subject areas? Guiding continuous improvement. Okay, Guskey's model, the purpose of the model is to guide continuous improvement. We need to be able to be consistent as we go about the business of teaching and learning. Consistent. It's not good to be able to just do it in one segment, but how can we go from one segment to the next segment and to have a chain link reaction in terms of the alignment on how we go about doing the business of education. All right. Also, demonstrate impact. The purpose is to demonstrate the impact of the professional development. In this, the things that are needed are accountability, making sure that we hold ourselves accountable as well as our colleagues and those who we lead. Also, impact on assessment and outcome measurements. Chapter 19, Glickman, curriculum development. Teacher involvement in curriculum. Teachers should play an active role in curriculum development, according to Glickman. Why it matters? Because curriculum and instruction are inseparable. Okay, increases professional ownership and improves implementation. Connects curriculum to classroom realities. How students learn, the best ways and best practices and strategies that students learn. Teacher leadership and teacher involvement in curriculum, the teacher leadership, the shared decision-making and professional autonomy, and curriculum ownership. Teachers need to be able to be invested and have a part to play in the development of the curriculum. If I have a part to play in the development of it at times, maybe not every time, but sometimes I have a say and I feel like my say is valued. And I'm valued based on me being the teacher and me being the expert in my room. And you're asking me what I think about the development, what I think should be, the A, B's, and C's and the variables in terms of how we do things as in teaching, the pedagogical approach, then we are doing what we should do in terms of development and involvement in curriculum, and making sure that teachers have a say and a voice, and they're not just teaching some mundane thing that is being handed down to them that they have no association with or connection to. Issues in teacher involvement. Several factors influence effective teacher participation. Okay, Glickman notes 5 key issues: level of participation, decision-making authority, time for curriculum work, curriculum development skills, and balancing district goals and teacher autonomy. Level of participation that influence effective teacher participation. Okay, what level of participation or decision-making authority? Time for curriculum work. Do I have time to do this curriculum work? Curriculum development skills, balancing district goals and teacher independence. Distributive leadership, okay? Are we able to utilize those people in our buildings to be able to do things so that they are involved in the construction of curriculum? Capacity building. Capacity building and consensus building and role clarity are key terms for this particular objective. All right, transformation approach. Multicultural curriculum should transform perspectives, not simply add content. Multicultural curriculum should transform perspectives and not simply add content. Characteristics are multiple cultural viewpoints, inclusive understanding of knowledge, critical examination of issues, and greater cultural awareness. Multiple cultural viewpoints. We want to make sure that the curriculum is able to transform perspectives, change perspectives, and not simply just add to the content, but you're able to gain a perspective. You're able to gain something that you didn't know prior to your engagement in the curriculum. Curriculum mapping. With curriculum mapping, curriculum mapping, as we know, is the process of educators using the curriculum to align teaching materials, activities, and assessments with the overarching learning goals. The curriculum mapping, it creates a blueprint so that we can track what is being taught and when it's being taught. So to align curriculum across grades and subjects is the purpose for curriculum mapping, for curriculum maps, to identify gaps, to reduce redundancies, and to support continuous revision. To reduce redundancies, please, 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 because we do this a lot, doing things over and over again. It's almost like the definition of insanity, expecting a different result. We do some of the same things over and over again. We put a new twist or a new spin or a new name on it, but it's actually the same thing we've been doing year after year with a new twist and new name many times. Okay, Wiggins and Mateig's 6 facets of understanding. Mateig's 6 facets of understanding. Our deep understanding goes beyond memorization. Students demonstrate understanding when they can. First thing is they explain. Second thing, with the 6 levels of facets of understanding, are students able to explain what they've learned? Can they explain? Can they teach what they've been taught? Can they interpret? Can they interpret what they've learned? Understanding when they can. Can they interpret? Can they break down? Can they pull out new ideas or different ideas that relate to the subject of what the objective or the goal of teaching was? Can they apply it? Can they apply it? Can they perform it on assessments? And can they utilize it also in just delivering presentations and being able to present it in different projects that they participate in? Also show perspective. Are they able to show perspective, demonstrate empathy, and exhibit self-knowledge? Connection to learning is authentic assessment, real-world application. We talked about that a lot this year at my school with the Marzano's approach to high-yield high reliability schools and high yield strategies of learning. We talked about the connection of learning and how authentic assessment and the real world application, utilizing those levels of understanding what students bring to the table, being able to associate the curriculum and what's being taught to real world scenarios and illustrations and examples. Transfer of knowledge. So the transfer of knowledge and also the metacognition approach are other parts of Wiggins and Mateague's 6 facets of understanding. All right. That was my presentation.
All right, very good. I have a question. You can stop your share. I heard something over the weekend at the conference. It was said in one of the sessions that talking about PLCs as a small group version of professional development, which is what it's supposed to be. And it was said by a person there that if you weren't talking about students in your PLC, that it wasn't a PLC. Let me repeat that. If you weren't talking about students in the PLC, that it's not a PLC. What do you think about that statement?
I think that's, I may not give you a full answer, but I think that's partly true.
I
I think that's
think
partly true.
for me, I think that's a little bit too basic because we can talk about student outcomes, we can talk about approaches to instructional delivery to boost student engagement. So it should be student centered, but not necessarily about students.
And I'll add on to what John just mentioned. So teachers can learn from each other in professional learning communities. So it doesn't, so yes, it's student centered and student focused. Like John said, it's about how the instruction is delivered. So it may be that teachers are teaching each other or looking at the curriculum together to identify the gaps, if you will, and then, sharing ideas on how a particular standard can be taught for students who need extra support and scaffolding.
Okay. I
I
think, go ahead, Regina.
Okay, so I think I'm on both sides of the fence with this one because I hear what you all are saying, but I also think that even in this setting we're in right now, we're in our own PLC at this moment. And
Yep.
so when we are going through topics here in class, immediately a teacher comes to mind. And
Mhm.
so if we're doing a reflection on what, Mondale just presented, as I'm doing my reflection, I'm thinking of teacher X and how support teacher X. So when you say now share an example or share how this has affected you, Regina, then at that point I'm going to say, I think this is a great strategy because this will help me better coach teacher X. And so I think it's the same thing in the PLC environment as we are using our learning new strategies, our teacher, talking to each other and sharpening each other's sword up at that time. There should be at least the name of one child in your mind about how is this closed reading strategy going to help? Or even if you say, well, one thing, my AIG class has really been struggling with drilling down to the most minute part of the standard. So now that I'm hearing how you're delivering instruction on that standard, I can now think of how I can implement this in my AIG class. So I think we may not be calling children's names in every PLC, but children still are playing a key role in the PLC, the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I have 2 points to make. That slide that Mondale showed that is very good, by the way. It talks about perspective. That's what we're talking about. How would this put that that new strategy in perspective. Who, and that means who would it work with? That's what Regina's talking about. That's that perspective piece. I like that. But what I fear, see, not myself, but you folks are very advanced instructional minds and have demonstrated expertise in this business. What I worry about is when beginning teachers here, we should be talking about kids, that all they'll do is sit and talk about Johnny's behavior. That's what I worry about. If we have perspective, and that's what Regina was just reminding us of. If we have perspective in our mind, we can say, all right, this strategy worked for this particular type of kids or might work with that kid. But beginning teachers, when you say, well, you should be talking about kids, all they'll be talking about is kids' behaviors. That's what I see 90% of the time in PLCs that leads me to believe that that's why they're no more effective than they are. They're stuck on talking about kids, but not in the right context and not with perspective. So that's one of the things that I would say in terms of supervising PLCs as professional development. Now, remember, if we're assuming that everybody understands. If we go back to Guskey's model or Linda Darling Hammond's model, that what Darling Hammond calls small group professional development, that's what PLCs are for. If in that context, we just can't sit and talk about kids' behaviors all the time in the context that we're talking about, when you're supervising PLCs, you need to be looking at that as a professional development activity and tool. And you need to be looking at the content of what these people are talking about and doing. They can't just sit and discuss student behavior all the time. That will not get you very far down the road. It also leads to a very bitter staff. Um, they get cranked up and angry um, because they're focused on the wrong thing. So back to John's point, it's a lot more, it's a lot more in depth than just we need to be talking about kids. Because the neophytes in our business, that's all they do. That's what they think it is, unfortunately. And that's why we don't do any better. Camille?
Yeah, I want to reiterate too that a lot of times in PLCs, I know when I was an instructional coach, a lot of times, like Mondale said about the high yield instructional strategies,
Marzano.
right? And I do know that like last year and the previous years when I was a well, I still am an AP, but back when I was in another district, it was mandatory that in every lesson that you did at least one or two of these high yield instructional strategies.
Mm-hmm.
But then we found out that when we went into observe that a lot of the teachers did not fully understand
Mm-mm.
how to actually implement it. So a
Right.
lot of times we, even though it was a PLC, we might have done a quick little practice
Yeah.
or a quick little scenario.
Yeah.
So just that, even though we have the students, in mind, however, we're not sitting there talking bad about students or anything like that. We're doing a quick little practice or how to deliver this strategy in real time right in front of me. And we would do it practice and we would do it together. And it's the teachers that teach the same subject that probably had the same problems, but we're practicing it together. And then you go into the classroom and do it.
Yeah. I think Naisha made a good point. You got to do the modeling. You got to do the modeling that you want in PLCs. Otherwise, it just becomes Trash Johnny. And the funny thing about that is, when I say that, it's not really funny. But the curiosity about that to me is while we're sitting there and we're venting on Johnny, you think, well, let him vent and get it out. No, it just gets worse. That's a downward spiral. Oh, poor, pitiful me. Um, I,
Yeah.
well,
And
that's
yeah.
it's just like then they start feeling sorry for themselves and how bad they got it and how underpaid they are to have to deal with this. And it's culturally, it just spirals out of control. Or as Mondale pointed out, we always talking about a certain kid. Even we sometimes I'll be kind, which is not obviously that's goes against my nature. I think maybe sometimes that these folks don't even realize how biased they are. Um, because for whatever reason in our society now, we have this indemnity clause invented by a certain political party that if you start any statement with "I am not a" fill in the blank, racist, bigot, misogynist, whatever, then you can say and do the most racist, bigoted, misogynist things that you want to, as long as you indemnify yourself. I am not a. But if you do those things, you are a. And that's one of the things we have to be careful of in those venting sessions in PLCs, as Mondale brought up. Now, here's the thing: if you love kids, it won't matter. But see, that's the problem. We have people that can't find it in their heart to love all kids. They love certain kinds of kids, but they certainly they don't, certain others they don't really care for. And it's amazing how they almost all look the same. I guess it's just coincidental.
Dr. Lamb, I wanted to say something that I thought about. I wish we would do more like retreats start in school. So speaking from a school that was proficiently kids came from doctors, lawyers, and we transitioned. Even though our principal, she said it out her mouth, like these are different type of kids, but nobody modeled for them. And so when they came, it's like Johnny's sleeping in class all day. Sparkle has an attitude. And I'm like, okay. Like the first thing they want to do is send them out. And I'm like, well,
Yeah,
if you talk to them, wake them up. Maybe they don't sleep at night. They don't sleep at night. Well, they probably on a game, like their idea, like they're just so lost. And I'm like, I wish we could do more modeling for adults because some people really just don't know. Like if you're
yeah,
used to a certain type of student,
yep,
and now you don't, it's like they push them off. And it's true because I'm the Black teacher that has worked with low students. They're always like, well, you can just fix it, Miss Howard. You can fix it. Like, but don't you want to fix it? It's your students. And it's like, no, I've never seen teachers that want their kids to go to other places. Most
yeah.
teachers, like, no, you ain't going
And
nowhere. You're gonna learn from me.
that's just as ludicrous as sending all the grumpy old white men to me to talk to.
Yeah.
Um, I mean
And
that
Dr. Ram,
it's just as ludicrous as that.
and
Yes,
then you have that other perspective.
Mondale.
You have that. Thank you. You have that other perspective of that teacher who indignantly wants to try to act like they can. I'm saving this child. I'm going to save this child.
Oh God.
Well, but has that negative vibe, and I'm using that. I'm using that like that political vibe with saying with saving with
Well,
trying to act like they're going to save a child.
we
I got
introduced
to save them.
whether we knew it or not, and again, um, I don't think it was widespread, but in the 90s when we created Teach for America, the domestic Peace Corps, basically. I mean, the whole notion of that was that these white people were going to come in and save all these at-risk minority kids. That was the whole point of Teach for America. It's exactly what it was. And you got these people who, some of them went to really good private schools, but then it was like that they were, um, it was like the Peace Corps, they were saving these people and doing that. But that's a theme in our business. That just basically clarified it. I got some of those in Charlotte. I had one that was really good, really, really good. She was a young black lady and was in business. I actually referred her to a friend of mine who hired her at IBM, but she was great. But the rest of them were kind of liberal white girls that wanted to try to save everybody. Um, and that's about you. That's not about students. That's an ego boost for you. It's not about them. That's not some great selfless thing. That's about That's about you. And see, that's what
Definitely.
all of these things are part and parcel of what I worry about when we sit and think about, well, we should just be talking about kids and PLCs. Uh, as John said, that's too simple. What we need to be able to do is be doing that perspective piece that Regina talked about. If we're talking about this, how does it relate to a kid, not just sitting and trashing kids all the time, because that's where that goes. I know how that goes. Once you get started, boy, it gets easier. It's just like piling on. That's what I worry about in PLCs, is that we're not modeling, that even though we're committing a lot of time and resources to them, and time is a resource in our business because we're paying people during that time, and I don't know that we're getting the return on investment that we need to be getting. I think that's what I see. All right.
Dr. Lamb, I'll add just, and I think I'm next, but I'll add this as
Yes,
well.
Kanisha.
You guys made me think of two things. One, when you talk about saving students, I also often find saving through low expectations or lowering expectations.
Right.
So, kind of just giving students what you think they can master, which then goes back to that, just having that expectation that all students can't learn at the same level. So that was one thing you made me think about. Um, and oh, what was the second? You talked about when you started off with saying that you think people don't necessarily, you didn't say people don't love kids, but sometimes if we start with the love of children, we would avoid some of the pitfalls that we've been discussing. And I wholeheartedly agree. As I've been transitioning and meeting with folks and they ask like, what do you want? What do you want? I say, just somebody who, one, loves children, and two, has that open mindset to be able to learn and grow. We can teach you strategies. We can model for you, as you guys have mentioned with PLCs, but you got to have that love for children as a
Right.
foundation that to build off of. But those were my little 2 cents that I was
Thank
going
you.
to add.
All right, I'm gonna give you a quick litmus test if you can tell if teachers love kids or not. If teachers get angry and take it personal when kids act out, they don't love kids. See, it's about them. It ain't about kids. That's your litmus test right there. That they're incensed, that they're angry, that they're insulted over a kid misbehaving or acting out. They take it personally. Then they don't love kids. Because if they did, they'd understand that's just part of it. Um, and so. Yeah, that's and as Naisha said, they are kids. That's true. If you take it personally, um, if people take it personally, that's the kind of teachers you don't want. You do not want them because it's always about them, and there'll always be a conflict. There'll never be there'll never be a de-escalation. There'll only ever be an escalation all the time. You know that. You know those teachers that when it starts, it's on like Donkey Kong. It's just going to get worse. It's never going to de-escalate. It's going to go to 11 every time. Out the roof and then the kid only escalates, and then it usually ends up in some form of violence. You know what I'm talking about. Um, and so modeling, understanding that PLCs, it's not about just talking about kids. It's that perspective. How would this work for a kid with a kid in mind, or that kind of kid? I think that's the idea. All right, who's next in our hit parade tonight? I see Yesenia's here. If you're ready, we'll let you go.
That's fine. I can go ahead and go.
All righty.
Can you guys see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me try it again.
Let me stop my video. That usually helps.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, can you guys still see it?
Yep, we can see it now.
Okay, so I have chapter 15, 16, and 17. And so starting off with chapter 15 is talking about direct assistance to teachers. And so when we're looking at direct assistance to teachers, we're looking at the 6 steps in clinical supervision, excuse me, sorry, my dogs are in here. The supervisory approaches, which are appropriate for clinical supervision, reciprocal and expert peer coaching, and then, of course, 4 strategies a mentor can use to assist a beginning teacher, and then teacher can foster a democratic and moral society. So first, starting off with the 6 steps of clinical supervision. Step 1 is the pre-conference, and this is a very important step because the purpose of this is for the observation is to be provided the criteria for making the remaining decisions, which is going to be the focus, the method, and the time of the observation. So the purpose is observation, focus of the observation, and again, method and form of the observation. So this is the very first step, which is again the pre-conference, which is the most important one. Step 2 will be the observation, and so the observation process is the follow through of the pre-conference of everything that was analyzed, what you spoke about, what is going to be expected, what we the observer is going to see in the observation. Step 3 then is the analysis and the planning. And so this is the analysis of the observation and planning the post conference. And so this is where you, the observer, have the final analysis, and then you're going to be sharing it with the teacher at the post conference. So this is where we're going to be sharing the observation data, the analysis, and of course, interpreting the meaning of the data, because it is no good to the teacher if you just share the data if the teacher does not understand the purpose and are able to interpret your data that was produced during the observation. And of course, produce a plan for instructional improvement. So there's always room for improvement. There's no such thing as a perfect observation, a perfect lesson plan. There's always things that can be tweaked within a lesson plan. And then that's where step 5 comes into place, which is the critique piece, which indicates that the supervisor is involved in the improvement effort as the teacher. So it's just not you, the observer, it also involves the teacher. So that collaboration when it comes to the critique piece is very important. And then that leads us to the very last step, which is step 6, which is the follow through. Because sometimes what we see as supervisors, we go and we offer the additional support, we offer the, what can the teacher do to make the improvement, but then sometimes we forget to go back and check in and follow through with the teacher to see if the teacher carried out the improvement activities that were suggested. So the supervisor has to assist the teacher with the improvement activity. So this is part of that follow through. And then both the teacher and the supervisor will reflect on the progress and future actions, and not just on that lesson plan, but for future lesson plans. So yes, we are providing feedback on that one lesson that we saw that we made the observation in. But again, the reflective piece is to improve the progress and future actions on future lessons as well. So moving on to the supervisory approaches, which is appropriate for clinical supervision. So this is where Glickman was talking about the formative evaluation of clinical evaluation, which is helping the teacher to design and implement an action plan to meet instructional improvement goals. So referring to clinical supervision provides a non-judgmental assistance aimed to improving the teacher's instruction. And because of that, it has been equated by some with formative evaluation. So one thing that you want to take from this piece is that it's a non-judgmental assistance. So we are there to help the teacher improve the instruction. So it is not, so of course, the clinical supervision, it is not consistent with a summative evaluation. So it is not intended to gather data to make judgments about whether teachers are meeting performance criteria for continued employment. So this is where clinical supervision sometimes it gets, moved to a different criteria as we're, talking about summative evaluation. We are here to provide that assistance, again, that non-judgmental assistance to help the teacher improve the instruction and their teaching to our students. And then when looking at reciprocal and expert peer coaching, so reciprocal coaching is referring to teachers observing and conferring with each other. And expert coaching is better trained or more experienced teachers assist lesser trained or lesser experienced teachers. The purpose of this reciprocal peer coaching is to acquaint teachers with each other teaching strategies. Again, every teacher has a different method of teaching, maybe that same lesson plan that was developed during PLC. So each teacher has a different strategy, and it's important for especially beginning teachers to see different classrooms, different teachers, as in how they're teaching a lesson, because those teaching strategies, teachers can, again, new teachers can gather, even experienced teachers can gather those strategies and use them and implement them into their classroom. So the purpose is to provide teachers with feedback on their teaching, assist them with developing action plans for instructional improvement. And again, the purpose of that is to focus on teachers' teaching, bring greater awareness and more reflective decision making. So going back to their teaching strategies, it's going to help them reflect as in, okay, I can see how I can, that can maybe work in my classroom, or how could I have made that lesson plan a little bit better? Because again, there's always room for improvement. There's no such thing as a perfect lesson. There's no such thing as a perfect observation. There's always some type of constructive feedback to help the teacher, again, gain those skills and become better at teaching, and of course, a better outcome for our students. Then when we're looking at the 4 strategies a mentor can use to assist a beginning teacher, so the first thing is understanding the purpose of procedures of peer coaching. Sometimes when we are looking at teachers that are peer coaches, they think, well, they are a seasoned teacher, they're going to be great teaching our new teachers and being a peer coach. And sometimes that is not the case, because that seasoned teacher may not understand what is the purpose of you being that peer coach. Then the second one is conducting a pre-conference for determining the focus of the observation. So going back to that peer teacher, they need to be able to understand what's the focus of the observation. So it is not there to be completely negative, as in, well, you should have done this. Did you see little Johnny over there had his head down? Did you see little Chrissy over here was sleeping, excuse me. Did you see that, the students were not on task? It is to help the teacher build up those strategies and to provide the data, and again, provide the resources to help the teacher become better at teaching and delivering, the content to our students. And then that leads us to conducting and analyzing an observation to distinguish between observing and interpreting classroom events. And again, going back to classroom events, this could be classroom management, it could be classroom, misbehavior, students sleeping on task. So it is important to distinguish between the two, because when we're doing an observation, we need to make sure that when we're gathering that data, that we're able to interpret it, and then of course discuss that data with the beginning teacher. And then the last one, number 4, is conducting 2 post conferences with different approaches for developing action plan. So one will be using a non-directive approach, and the other is using a collaborative approach. And so both are very important. And so this is why it's important to have those two post conferences to gather further feedback from the teacher. And sometimes it could be that maybe you were looking for something as a peer coach that you didn't see in that lesson plan, but maybe the beginning teacher had used that strike or had conducted that in a previous lesson that you were not there for. So this is why the post conferences are extremely important, that we follow through as peer coaches with our beginning teachers. And then teacher can foster a democratic and moral society. And so this is what new teachers can use to go ahead and ensure that they are fostering democratic society in their classroom. So to improve classroom culture. So the classroom is viewed as a vehicle of culture and a vehicle of transforming culture. So teachers need to ensure that they're treating students equitably. So it doesn't mean that they're going to treat everyone, let's say that little Johnny, because he continues to sleep, that she's not going to, give her full, intention and making sure that little Johnny, like we say, hey, Johnny, I need you to get up. Is she really going to go ahead and create that classroom culture to where Johnny is still feeling included, that to where Johnny, even though that he's sleeping or maybe he's not paying attention, that she is still treating him, with the same respect as, all the other students. Teacher must follow democratic principles. Teacher and students demonstrate compassion to those in need. Again, going back to those students that, they may be acting out, maybe misbehaving. We don't know what that, home life might be like, and doesn't know what maybe in this case is little Susie, what she might be going through. So it's important that teachers demonstrate this compassion to students instead of just immediately assuming and performing a judgment of why the student is misbehaving or why the student is sleeping. Students feel emotionally safe, and of course, cultures respected, valued, and celebrated, especially, whenever we see, so in our community, we have a lot of the Hmong population also is in the rise. And so when we were doing the graduations, they wanted to perform one of their dances. So make sure that, if students are asking for, specifically in this case, that they were asking time for their 8th grade graduation to perform a dance, that we go ahead and respect it and see if how can we integrate this into the celebration. And before you know it, you're going to have other students asking to participate in showing their own culture. So making sure that the cultures are respected, valued, and celebrated is how a teacher can foster a democratic and moral society. So the leadership takeaway from chapter 15 is, of course, we as leaders, we need to lead by example, self-reflection. So we also need to continuously self-reflect, because again, we continue to learn. Education changes, almost like it seems like on a daily basis. So important for leaders to continue to self-reflect, collaborate with teacher, the coaches, the mentors, and of course, the students, very important piece. Develop action plans that meet the needs of all stakeholders. And again, ongoing reflection, and this is why it's on there twice, because it's not just a first reflection and then it's going back and reflecting again. So ongoing reflection as a leader, it continues to happen for us as leaders to continue to grow and to ensure that we're doing everything we're supposed to provide the correct support and strategies for all of our teachers, especially our beginning teachers. Now, in chapter 16, it talks about the evaluation of teaching. So when we're looking at the evaluation of teaching, it talked about the value added evaluation system, but then it also spoke about the value added component, which is student performance, and then of course, test scores and teacher evaluations. So starting first with value added evaluation system, this is all the high stake tests that should be a measure used in the evaluation of teaching. So this is where we're looking at new accountability systems. This is what Glickman was talking about. It typically includes the standards for effective teaching, which is the state, in this case, like all of the EOGs or EOCs or district rubrics that is used to assess the compliance with those standards, and of course, multiple classroom observations to rate teaching performance based on rubrics. So basically, the evaluation system is looking at all of this in once. And this is why it's talking about those high stakes tests, because we are looking at math, we're looking at ELA, we're looking at science, and then of course, when we get to high school, then you're looking at other math courses. So it's only talking about the high stakes achievement test. So when looking at that component, if we add student performance, this is where that value added component comes into place, which means that the part of the teacher's evaluation is based on student performance. Often it's measured by those high stakes achievement tests. So should the student's performance still be part of that, teacher's evaluation? So this is what we are looking at now. So teachers who are rated poorly on the rubric of those students who did poorly on performance measures usually are placed on an individual growth plan and ultimately can be fired for not meeting the standards. Another problem with linking student performance to teachers' evaluation is that test scores to the teacher's evaluation is that the individual student itself, there could be other types of factors that could be happening that are going to impact those scores. So individual teachers, there are so many things that can influence that student achievement, but then the teacher themselves, because you have a new set of kids, if you're at the high school level, you're getting them semester wise, so you're getting a new set of kids every semester. So it is very unfair because it's going to fluctuate because you're not having those same students. And again, there's some that are happening that are going to impact the student achievement. And then the last piece of this is the evaluator's rating of the teacher is also unstable over time because the ratings of the teacher are going to different. They're going to, depending on who the observer is, depending if it's the AP or if it's the principal. So it's very inconsistent. So it is not fair to also use that as part of the teacher's evaluation when we're looking at the whole piece. So then going back to test scores and teacher evaluation. So a teacher who teaches different subjects is faced with the prospect of an evaluation based on test results, is likely to focus more on the test subjects than other subjects. So if you have a teacher that is teaching two different subjects, she or he is going to focus mainly on that high stakes subject compared to the one that is not a state tested exam. And then teaching to the test means that students will not develop an understanding of the broader meaning and value of the subject because you're just teaching to the test. So you're just teaching what they need to know for the test. You're not giving them a full understanding, a full picture of, why is it that, photosynthesis happens? Why is it that it occurs? And then teachers evaluated on content area test results are less likely to teach important concepts that cut across content areas and are not measured by any of the subject area tests. So that's another big piece because we're continuing to talk about cross curriculum and how we need to collaborate with other teachers and other subjects. And so teaching again back to the test, then we can't teach other important concepts that will be cross curriculum. And then focus on an individual teacher's performance rating, fosters competition rather than, collaboration associated with improving schools. And then lastly, support. So several support structures increase the probability of success. So again, going back to that teacher evaluation and going back to teaching the test and looking at the whole picture. And again, this is why it's not, and it should not be, test score should not be part of that teacher evaluation. So why teachers should be involved in the program evaluation. So of course, we are talking about the curriculum. So teachers need to be aware and need to be, need to be aware and need to be able to collaborate with the school leaders as in what needs to be done to be able to teach the curriculum, if there's the strategies that need to be reinforced, if it comes to getting the content coach in there. So again, curriculum is very important. The teachers need to be part of that discussion. Instructional programs directly affect teaching and student learning, and again, professional development, and of course, student assessment. So the program evaluation, we're looking at formative and summative. So the formative evaluation, the purpose is to improve a program, which occurs while the program is in progress and the ongoing through the life of the program. And then the summative evaluation is the result and judgment of the program, which usually is the basis decision whether the program will continue, undergo major revisions, or be remained. So the final takeaways from chapter 16 is that direct assistants provide or facilitate one-to-one support to teachers to improve their instructions, evaluation of teaching, which provide or coordinate assessment of instruction at the individual teacher, team, or the school level, and of course professional development, which is the learning opportunities for teachers to improve that instruction. Now, as we move on to chapter 17, we are looking at group development. So we are looking in chapter 17, it talked about the 5 stages of group development, skills of a successful group, characteristics of effective groups, and then 3 ways a supervisor can assist a group. So starting off with the 5 stages of group development, we're looking at stage 1, which is forming. And this is where group members at this stage are fairly passive and reliant on the group leader. So as the supervisor, the leader should focus on developing those positive relationships with the group members and leading activities and conversations that assist the group members in developing a positive relationship with each other. So this is how, as a leader, we are supporting that group, because, and this could be maybe new teachers, are coming into the building and they're forming part of that new PLC. And so, of course, they're fairly passive and they're going to be more reliant on that group leader. So this is how we can support that. Stage 2 is storming, which is norming stage is replaced by conflict. So now we're seeing that something it's happening, something's changing. So some of this conflict may result from anxiety about the organization's expectations. It could be maybe power struggles within the group, and of course, differences in opinion about group goals, roles, and procedures. Again, the thing that comes back to mind to me is PLCs, because that's sometimes where we can see a lot of the teachers coming together and trying to either come up with an action plan, come up to see, as in, if we're having this problem with this standard, how can we go about reinforcing it? How can we go about, as in, bringing in the students in for additional support? So what the leader's goal is to convince the group to direct the conflict towards a foregoing and common values, goals, norms, and procedures. So for the leader, this process becomes a balancing act, especially if we're looking at a power struggle. It can be a very, difficult balancing act, but as the leader, this is how we need to make sure that we are coming in and supporting those groups, especially if we're seeing this at the PLC level. So stage 3 is norming through discussion and negotiation. The group develops ground rules for social interaction, goals, and procedures for achieving, of course, those common goals that they have come up with. So the leader's role in this phase is to facilitate the group as it establishes its norms, not to dictate those norms, and to foster group consensus on goals, roles, and procedures that will assist the group in achieving its mission. So again, going back to that PLC, this is where the leader is observing and looking at the groups and making those observations to be able to support those teams, those groups. Stage 4 is performing, which is the group has reached full maturity and optimal performance. So here at this stage, the leader's responsibility are to encourage continuous improvement, provide challenging new tasks, and recognize both individual and team performance. And then lastly, stage 5, which is adjourning, which is the group the group continues its activities because it has completed its mission and celebration is in order. So these are the 5 stages of group development. So I missed one. Stage 5 still going on with adjourning. So when the leader can provide structures for allowing the team member who wishes to continue communicating and providing mutual support to do so. So characteristics of effective groups. So what's going on as the leader, this is how we need to ensure that the groups, the PLCs, are actually effective, that they're not just meeting to meet, to grade papers, to do anything but to collaboratively be working. So these characteristics, we must be able to see clear goals that challenge the unify of the group. The group is, collaborating. They're being cohesive. That they're actually on task. The group has to develop these collaborative skills, including communication, decision making, conflict management, planning, and of course, problem-solving skills. And the group views itself as a dynamic rather than a static system, and continuously gathers data in its process and progresses. So it has to be continuous progress. It can't be just stagnant. Once you reach optimal velocity, you don't stop. You must continue to progress. So these are just characteristics of what effective groups should look like as the leaders are looking into PLCs or any other groups that they may have in their school building. So 3 ways a supervisor can assist a group. Of course, group observation. So it's important that supervisors come into these PLCs, that they sit into the PLCs and they're listening and making those observations and, gathering important feedback of what's being said, what's being discussed at each of the PLCs. So as leaders, we must be present whenever these groups are together, whenever the PLCs are joining. And so it's important to rotate and not just stick with the same group. We must be able to rotate and see the different PLC groups. And of course, then direct control behavior. So again, whenever we are making these observations, the leader, what we must see is that a group is functioning at a very low developmental levels, lacking the expertise needed to act on the problem, and without any commitment to its resolution. So as we're making these observations, we must be able to see if the group is functioning at a very low developmental level. That means that they're not moving forward and find a resolution to their discussion. And then we also have what is known as directive informal behaviors. And this is, as a leader, is used with a group functioning at moderately low levels of development, expertise, and commitment. So this is where you, the school leader, need to see, okay, they're moderately low. They're not low as before, but they're still moderately low. And of course, they need to start developing that expertise and that commitment. And this is how a supervisor can, as they're seeing this, provide those correct resources, lead them to those correct resources, and follow through. So it's very important that as leaders that we are following through, not just giving them the resources and assume that they're going to go ahead and take charge. Again, just because they're still moderately low doesn't mean that, that they can't continue to grow. They need to reach, continue to progress and reach that optimum velocity and continue to increase. So, leadership takeaways from chapter 17, support group development, which is some groups journey through all the 5 stages. Some other groups may not even go through the 5 stages. And of course, they may stop or they may stagnate, or they either continue functioning at a less than full capacity or disband because of their inability to fulfill their mission. So, when we're looking at these group developments as the leaders, we need to ensure that we are constantly there focusing on their journey and providing those resources, especially we see that they're low performing or they're moderate performing or they have reached full capacity, that we continue to challenge them to continue to progress. And then evaluation of teaching, provide or coordinate assessment of instruction to the individual teacher, team, or school level. So again, this could be when we're looking at the content coaches. This is when we're looking at other peer observations, looking at peer coaching. So we're looking at everything that is coming together to be able to help the teacher or the team continue to improve, and again, going back and following through. Professional development, of course, learning opportunities for teachers to improve their instructions. Like I said earlier, there's always room for improvement. There's no such thing as a perfect lesson. There's no such thing as that, there is no room for improvement. There's always going to be room for improvement. And that is the end of my presentation.
Excellent. In the shell tonight, under that PowerPoint that I added for Sham and Brittany, it's kind of a review of old school leadership. And one of the major theorists that nobody talks about anymore, that I suggested that a doctoral candidate, I worked with one last night in the sessions, add is Getzels and Guba. Getzels and Guba. And what they're famous for, and they did their studies in school settings, and it's what we now call values. That's what Yesenia was just talking about when we talk about norms and values. But what Getzels and Guba talks about is there will be conflict in an organization if what the organizational leadership needs and wants for you to do every day as a teacher is not what you value or what you can do or want to do every day. I think that's one of the missing parts of PLCs as well, is we don't set values. What's important. Now, Yesenia was talking about, putting pressure on teachers by adding EVOS, outcomes to their evaluation. But in an ideal world, and before, when I was principal, before accountability came along, and yes, I'm that old, that was okay. But now you can't ignore, at your own peril, you ignore outcomes. And we may not make it so much of their formal observation or evaluation, but we certainly have to use that data when we're scheduling classes and kids with classes. In a perfect world, we wouldn't hold teachers accountable for student outcomes, but in our world, we have to. We have to hold them accountable in the formal evaluation system for outcome of students. We have to. And so that's where a lot of that conflict comes in. You pointed that out. Teachers don't like that. They have a sense that it's not fair to hold them accountable. But schools are held accountable. Administrators are held accountable. Regina, how's your school going to do this year on your test score standardized testing?
We are up. So we're in a happy place right now.
Do you think that she didn't know? You don't think she hadn't been tracking that?
24/7.
24/7.
And congrats to Naisha as well, because I heard her data this morning. Shout out to Naisha.
There you go.
I also want to say that the middle school where I'm at, we are no longer low performing. So yes, we
Yay.
are now up to
Yay.
a C, which is awesome. So we were happy to
Yay.
see that as well. So no longer low
Yay.
performing.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. See, we don't have the option for that not to be a part of evaluation. But as your senior pointed out, that's where a lot of the conflict and hard feelings come. That's what Getzels and Guba talks about. We have to have a common set of values, and everybody has to understand that. That we have to have a common set of values. Both the leadership and the and the rank and file teachers have to have a common set of values, and those have to be displayed in that PLC. We have to talk about test scores in those PLCs. We have to. I mean, our values are is that outcomes matter. But yes, if you go back now, it's old, 1957. But I'm telling you, Getzels and Guba talked about that. What's that? 60, 70 years ago. Talked about organizational conflict in schools when there's role ambiguity or when the roles don't converge when when leadership needs for you to do one thing and teachers want to do another or don't feel like that they don't buy into the accountability that the outcomes matter. That's what we're talking about here. That's chief among the things that we have to make sure is expressed clearly in PLCs is that you are going to be evaluated on the outcome of your kids because I am as a principal, we are as a school, we are as a school district. Outcomes matter. If they didn't, we wouldn't keep score. It all circles back. Some crazy old man, every time you're around him, he says, the roles of school administrators make a good number go up or a bad number go down. That's our job. I hate to reduce it to something that's oversimplistic as that, but I'm telling you, that's really all that matters. Can you make a good one go up or a bad one go down? That's the way the world works. And teachers have to understand that. Nobody gets a pass. Everybody has to understand the role. Everybody has to have a common set of values. PLC work is where you do that. All right. So we have one more tonight, Naisha. Or no, Kanisha. Are you last on the yep, there she is. Look at her. She's beat me to the punch here. Let me turn off my screen so hers will pop up.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm just trying to move y'all out of the way so I can hit play. And I am going to wait, it's thinking. All right. Can everybody see
We
presentation?
can.
All
Excellent.
right. I am going to try to make it short and sweet. But good evening again. And this evening, I'm presenting on chapters 20 and 21. Chapter 20 is all about action research. So when we talk about what action research is, it's the definition, according to Glickman, is a study conducted by colleagues in a school setting of the results of their activities to improve instruction. So many times when I think about action research, I think about some PLC conversations in my experience where you might have one teacher in the team that wants to address a identified problem one way, another wanted to address it another way. And so to kind of have an opportunity to give some teacher autonomy, we may say, all right, well, let's look at some action research. If you try it that way and this person tries it the other way, we see kind of what the results are. And we look at what either was best for students overall and or what worked best for particular students within the group that we may be able to use for differentiation purposes or whatever else it is, to move learning forward. So those have been some personal experiences that I thought about, that may align with action research. Glickman compared traditional research and action research as outlined in the chart listed below, or excuse me, in the middle of the screen. And just by who usually leads it, the kind of data, your purpose, and then your standards and primary audience. And you can see the key differences include either if it's someone from the outside or someone actively practicing the research that we're getting ready to conduct. If we're looking at new knowledge or trying to improve a specific problem of practice, both look at quantitative and qualitative data. And I won't read the rest to you because it's all there in front of you. But the key takeaway for me in traditional versus action research is um, thinking about back in the 90s. I'm a 90s girl. There was a clothing brand called FUBU, and their acronym was For Us, By Us. So I think of action research kind of like I thought about FUBU and that designer. There are phases of action research outlined here on the screen. First, you're going to identify a problem or a focus area that you want to attack. You're going to conduct a needs assessment to get that background data on what it is that you're trying to target with that focus. Design the plan, carry it out, and then you're evaluating and revising within that process. There are a couple of approaches to action research. Three under alternative approaches were described as interpretive, critical, or appreciative. Interpretive research um, studied a specific phenomena in schools. Critical research challenged, and these are in summary, an inequity that a group wanted to look at, and appreciative built on a positive within the school. So again, action research is grounded in data. It's often cyclical, it's incremental, and it's very detailed and documented. So you can see exactly kind of what you were trying to address and what that impact of your work was. When we look at the phenomena in schools, oftentimes that relates to teacher experiences versus student experiences and some of the critical questions that were posed by Glickman and others in the reading. Again, with critical challenges, there were areas of it made me think about when you're in those meetings with teachers and you ask, well, why is it that you do what you do? What's your rationale? And it comes back to, well, this is how we've always done it. So as I was reading and I saw that, it made me think about this is how we've always done it. But again, with that lens of who is the who's benefiting and who's not. And when we talk about who's not benefiting, those inequities that have traditionally existed, this is an opportunity or an approach that we can use to challenge that inequity. And then again, in appreciative, we're trying to build on those positives. They also talked about 4 to 5 phases within the appreciative model, and it was the 4 to 5 Ds. And for example, it was dream, design, etc., that were a part of how you would process that kind of approach in action research. Under shared governance, this was always, according to what I read here, an instructional focus. So you're not looking at other structural needs within the school. You're looking at an instructional focus. And in summary, everyone had a seat at the table. Everyone had an equal vote. And it went from small groups to authentic feedback and information through that shared process of collaborating and identifying what your next steps were going to be. All right. Some things that were in common in all of the areas listed were that, again, they were grounded in data, cyclical, incremental, and detailed and documented. Leadership takeaways. There was lots of ownership and collaboration within the action research process. It was always focused in that continuous improvement. And again, for us, by us. And so just that continuous cycle of identifying that plan, how we were going to attack it, continually evaluating the effectiveness, and then deciding how we need to move forward in the best interest of students and learners. And prior to moving on to chapter 21, one key suggestion made by Glickman in that chapter was ensuring that you had training and preparation for your teams prior to going into this process. You could walk alongside each other, but it wasn't something that you just kind of threw your hands up and let people go out and do. So in the example that we started off with, let's look at some different approaches to a problem so we can come to the best um, next steps for that group of students. We're still making sure that those phases are happening, that we're conducting the action research ethically within particular guidelines. They mentioned developing a compliance process to ensure that ethics were always in play as we were looking at what, for example, strategies we might use, what groups we're looking at, etc. We also want to ensure that resources were available to teachers, and the biggest resource noted was time, and not just time to um, develop it, but time to allow it to play out, time to address the inequities or the issue that has been identified to really truly see the impact of the work that you're trying to do. And then lastly, to share. Once you found something that is successful or something that may not have been as successful, you share what you have in order to improve the processes moving forward. So that was chapter 20, all about action research. The next chapter is about facilitating change. And as we talked about facilitating change, the author started by talking about successful change efforts and failed change efforts. And in summary, some of the the efforts that failed were those that had a lack of collaboration. They kind of were looking at things in silos or not getting a variety of voices around the table. Those efforts that focused on symptoms versus causes, as well as try to, what I say often is we're going to move slow to move fast. But the point is, you just kind of make a knee-jerk reaction that, oh, this is the thing that needs to be changed. And then there's a domino effect because, again, that wasn't maybe the thing that was really the root cause of the issue that we're trying to address. So after looking at success versus failure, we looked at three main avenues for facilitating change. The first was the chaos theory. The second was systems thinking. And then the last one was education change theory. And the image on the screen is a comparison from the chapter for some of the key elements of each. So starting with the chaos theory, there were 7 elements, and they are outlined here. So I won't read them to you, but I will highlight a few pieces from each. First, with the non-linear element of the chaos theory is that it's kind of like its name states, things don't have to happen in a straight line. You might find yourself going in a different direction after receiving an interaction or a conversation or some ideas from other members of the school community that still is targeted in a successful focus towards change. It's not cause and effect. So that continuous collaboration and idea sharing, etc., allows us to not necessarily go in that straight line. It can be complex, making measurement difficult. Um, Again, it talks about it can't just be measured by external research on affected schools, legislated standards, or standardized achievement tests. So, although, our school report cards and things of that nature do measure based on some of those elements, when facilitating change, they said that, we have to look for additional ways to measure that success as it can be difficult. The next one was the butterfly effect. And again, one of the key takeaways for the butterfly effect for me was, as you'll see in looking at all of them, there was mention of in different ways about how one piece can impact the whole, kind of like the butterfly effect. But the thing that stood out that at least was different in my mind was that it can take, you're looking at medium range amount of time in allowing for that change to take place. So you're looking at maybe 1 to 2 years. I often hear leaders in my experience talk about at least 3 years to see some impactful change in the school. And you're looking at, goals, guidelines with built-in flexibility. The fractal element talks about how things such as school-wide self-development days, department meetings, classroom lessons, hallway interactions, all could reveal some of the characteristics that you need to be able to move the system forward. So it doesn't have to all be captured in one specific way to get the information that you need to be able to move that change forward. And then one that you will see across all areas is feedback. And it just, the authors highlighted the importance of feedback, that it is essential for monitoring and assessing change. And it can take the form of many things, such as students' performance data, survey results, something described as a quality circle, and the list goes on. But feedback was important. And it's cut off, I just realized, but the next one was about turbulence. And turbulence, when you initially look at it, you think negative. I know when I'm on a flight and we have turbulence, I'm not a happy camper. But in the chapter, they talk about negative turbulence being a way to allow for continuous growth. And what I read that as, when a system is continually experiencing success, it can become stagnant and inhibit growth. So having some turbulence can sometimes, I guess, keep you in focus of what your goals are and ensuring that you're not getting stagnant. Kids are going to be different, staff are going to be different. There are going to be variables that you need to continue to monitor for to ensure continuous improvement. And then the last one was strange attractors. And it just talked about these being a way for you to incorporate teacher leadership as an example within this process. And again, whenever you can incorporate teacher leadership, additional voices are heard, information and feedback flow in a way that can continue to improve teaching and learning. So that was the first element, the first approach to facilitating change was just chaos theory. Next, we looked at systems thinking. And in systems thinking, you're looking at the whole beyond the parts, but then you're also looking at the parts in context of the whole. In systems thinking, you also have a heavy emphasis on feedback. So they talked about 2 types of feedback, which was reinforcing and balancing. So again, reinforcing can help or hurt an effort. And they talk about in the example, it can help because maybe somebody talks about how something that they've utilized or that is the school district or the school is trying to implement, and they talk about how effective it has been for students or families, etc. But on the other hand, I think about a math curriculum that came out late in the summer last year, and the feedback was, oh, it came too late and we didn't have time and we can't. So that feedback ended up having a negative impact. Balancing feedback tries to protect the system by pushing back against change. So it kind of going back to that same example with the math curriculum, doing it too soon without the PD. That was an example of pushback that could be balancing feedback. Another thing that they highlighted was a method, again, going back to cause and effect relationships, called systems mapping, that can be used to engage members within the organization in a dialogue to look for those relationships and identify the true root cause of some of the concerns that are being brought to the forefront. So within, again, systems thinking and even educational change theory, for time's sake, I will say there was lots of overlap as it related to, again, things such as feedback, things such as cause and effect, and not jumping to conclusions. We also, one thing I want to highlight in systems thinking is those leverage points, and using the best leverage point to explore your next steps and attack solutions. Let's see. One process in my experiences that we used was something called the Plan, Do, Study, Act, that I thought about when we were looking at systems thinking. And again, in my new experiences just this summer, I was able to develop one for my 30, 60, 90-day plan. And although it has been crazy, I have had an opportunity within the last week or so to sit down and kind of go back and look at my study and my act. And it has been so beneficial in allowing me to see that, okay, although it's coming hot and fast, this is systemic. I am gathering the information I need to make the appropriate next steps. And again, just looking at feedback, collaboration, and things of that nature as key elements in facilitating change. I can see several of those elements through that process just this summer. All right. And let's see. Some takeaway. Oh, I feel like I skipped something. Okay, I'm gonna go to my takeaways. I'm sure I skipped something. But the big takeaways I felt like were encompassed in this image. You see the support, and when I saw the little people or the little heads, it made me continue to think about lots of voices around the table. Trust, important to build that trust for those voices to be heard. Exchange of information, teamwork, getting to the point where we're not falling victim to the knee-jerk reactions, but we are continuously sharing information and data towards the success of the whole. Yep, so we talked about culture, trust, dialogue. I'm just checking my notes to make sure I didn't forget anything. And oh, one key element that was also highlighted was how do you deal with conflict? So within change, there's always going to be a conflict that might come up or a problem. And they talked about how in these times it's important to, and there was a quote that I liked. It says, "The wise change leader will encourage resistors to make their objections public and attend carefully to the potential negatives that are identified." And so it made me think about the ambiguous they. In many conversations, you'll hear people say, well, they said this or they think that. So I guess public can sound scary, but what I read that as is the phrase that's coming to mind is like, say it with your chest or stand on it so we know kind of truly where it's coming from so we can look at how we need to best facilitate that change. So conflict will come. It will be a part of change. Ensure that you are providing support to your staff within that change was highlighted. Also being collaborative, distributing leadership. And again, all of that in my interpretation came back to that collaboration, communication, feedback, etc. And Dr. Lamb, I believe those were the key points that I wanted to highlight this evening. I'm sure I'm forgetting
Excellent.
something, but wanted to save time.
All righty. Um, couple of points, and we'll wrap it up for the evening. Excellent presentation. Excellent presentation. Um, Kanisha hit on two major things here: action research and systems change. Um, for your theoretical perspective, Kurt Lewin is the father of change. I believe he's 47, 1947. Kurt Lewin, Kurtlewin. He's the first person that ever wrote and talked about change as a process. Um, Chaos theory doesn't work real well in schools. It's too loosely coupled. In creative places like ad agencies or, in tech environments, Google is famous for their chaos theory, where, they didn't supervise people and, that when you have to supervise children, chaos theory is not really that good. Systems theory, um, uh, Argyris' double loop theory, you got to look at the system that produced the outcome. I would say that's probably the father of that one. Chris Argyris from Harvard, Argyrus. His double loop theory, Argyris' double loop theory, you got to look at the system. Systems thinking is one of the issues or one of the problems with that in an educational environment. System thinking's um, looks to change the system. It assumes a certain level of competency in all the employees. It's not really focused on people. It's more focused on systems, which if you've got a group of veteran teachers, that works really well, but not so much when you don't have all your teachers up to speed. Um, I guess of those theories, you got to kind of understand what the focus is. Change theory is generally what we look at, trying to get people to change, because change is about people. It's trying to get them, and so usually we're focused on change. In terms of action research, you heard Kanisha say that action research looks at an academic phenomenon, and that's why you hear me even tonight talking about we don't do. I'm going to encourage people to do phenomenologies, because we have to be able to identify a phenomenon. Now, I did one fairly recently in northeastern North Carolina in Halifax County, because we did have an academic phenomenon. It was a statistical anomaly. 100 kids in a school district, that's all, it's a small district. 100 kids took Math 1 in high school, and all 100 failed. Let me say that again. All 100 kids that took, you'd think by chance that three would pass, just by chance. But no, all 100 failed. Now that's an academic phenomenon. And so we did a phenomenology. The principal there was my doctoral student and did a phenomenology. Um, and looking at that academic phenomenon. Now, here's the piece that goes with that, and I'll share my screen real quick. I queued it up. When you do a dissertation like that, the expectation is that you will do an action plan. As you can see here, quite extensive action plan. I mean, the note, we're not talking about dissertations tonight, but this dissertation mirrors what you would do in a school district, and that's what we did. That there's an expectation that you would develop a plan. If an action research yields an action plan that has to be doable. Um, and I think that's the part that students don't understand. Um, let me amend that. Employees don't understand is if we commit to this action research, we have to be committed to a plan to change what we found. And a lot of school districts, they don't want that commitment piece that we're going to change this. They want to know, and they want a simple fix. They don't want a plan. They want a fix. Um, if a phenomenon occurred, you're going to have a plan. And that's another reason why I don't like doing phenomenologies is If we do them in a school district, nobody won't, we get a lot of blowback, a lot of pushback on a plan. Even though it's just written in a dissertation, they don't like that because that commits them to resources and time that they don't really want to do. So that's another reason why I would hesitate to do a phenomenology for your dissertation. Is you must, it is going to be an action research of an academic phenomenon, and we are going to have an actionable plan at the end, which, that's just an extra step. All right. Excellent job tonight. We're right on our time at 9:30. I appreciate you all being with me. I will see you Saturday week in Charlotte. If anybody has a better idea than ordering pizza for lunch, let me know. But we'll try to pick a place fairly close that maybe has some sandwich options too. I think Luigi's is only a couple miles away. I think their food's pretty decent. We'll do something like that. I'm about Jasoned out for I've had enough sandwiches for a while. All right. It's good to see everybody tonight. Thank you for being with us. Excellent job on. Congratulate all the presenters. Again, our stars of the night are Sparkle and Regina. Everybody catch up to them. I'll see you Saturday week in Charlotte. Good night.